All right, moving on to Shogun 2, I'd say this is an easy S tier.
What?
I agree, S tier it and move on.
Seriously?
Oh, not this shit again.
Shogun 2 is B tier, and I'm being generous. There's only one culture, so every faction feels the same. And CA's so lazy that even with just one culture, they made little unit variety.
Will you stop being such a contrarian already? There's little unit variety, but that only makes the battles smoother. There's always been a rock, paper, scissor element to Total War, and in Shogun 2, it's pushed to its max. Every unit fills its role perfectly with clear strengths and weaknesses.
You know what? Perfectly balanced is not what I would call spamming Ashigaru from turn 0 to 100.
And what do you expect CA to do anyway? Make up fantasy units like in your precious Rome, huh? The game takes place in feudal Japan. The lack of unit variety is just how it was.
Then they should have extended the time period to at least include the Japanese invasion of Korea in the late game. It was around the same period, and it would have at least given us one extra culture. Maybe even two if you include the contributions of the Ming.
Yeah, right. I'm sure including a Korea versus Japan war would have gone down really well with the Asian market. Totally wouldn't have resulted in online arguments even shittier than your opinions.
Even if we forgave the lack of variety between factions, there's still so much wrong with Shogun 2, it's not even funny. There are no city sieges. Every siege map is a copy-pasted fort. It cemented Napoleon's design of having troops regenerate automatically instead of being retrained, which ruins the immersion and makes soldiers feel like self-replicating bacteria rather than actual people. It also kept the stupid one-on-one combats between soldiers I've heard you guys criticize so much when Rome 2 first released, but here it's fine apparently because it fits your anime vision of Japanese warfare.
You're missing the point again and again. Yes, Shogun 2 is more streamlined than the earlier titles, and yes, streamlining can be an issue. But in this instance, they managed the perfect balance between complexity and streamlining to make the entire campaign feel smooth from beginning to end.
I agree with Joe, not to mention that visually Shogun 2 had a style so fresh it still holds up today.
Whatever, it's a B-tier game, but I'm not going to spend all day talking about it to blind fanboys. Feel free to put it in A if that means we can move on.
All right, moving on to Fall of the Samurai. Again, this is an S tier for me.
Definitely S tier. Now let's watch Donald argue that it actually belongs in F tier.
You know what? As much as I think Shogun 2 is ranked too high, Fall of the Samurai does feel like the actual smooth experience you were ranting about when discussing vanilla Shogun 2. If any game besides Medieval 2 is going to be an S tier, it should be this one.
You're a goddamn hypocrite. Wrong. How can your dumb ass criticize Shogun 2 so much but simp for FOTS? I bet it's just because it features guns.
Wrong. Guys, let's quit this discussion while we're ahead. Let's put this in S tier and switch to Rome 2.
Fine. I'll begin by saying that Rome 2 was beyond broken at release. It also streamlined the formula a lot, maybe even too much.
Oh, so now streamlining bothers you.
Shut up, Donald. Still, with all the extra patches and DLC the game received, I'd say it's in a good place now and deserves at the very least a B tier and maybe even an A tier.
If this is what you consider an A tier, then we may as well remove all of the lower ones. I can't believe you put the bar this low.
Oh, here we fucking go again.
Rome 2 is a step down from the first Rome in pretty much every way except graphical fidelity and scope. Cavalry is unsatisfying to use. In fact, soldiers in general display weird behavior on the battlefield and rubber band everywhere. The construction options are not numerous nor varied enough. Minor settlements are a pain in the ass to defend with the limited amount of armies.
Skill issue.
Let me talk. The politics system is boring. The army tradition system is bare bones.
Yeah, at least it's in there. I don't remember armies unlocking bonuses in Rome 1.
For once, you're right, they didn't. But you know what Rome 1 did have? Generals with an actual personality you could grow attached to. I know that's not your forte, not to mention the speeches. I'd trade the unlockable plus 1% movement speed any day for that, Joe.
I have to say, Rome 2 without mods is very mid to me, too. I'd say it's B tier, but I can see how C tier would be appropriate for it.
C tier would be fucking criminal. It's at least a B tier. Come on, man.
It's at most a D1, but I'm fine with C tier if it can prevent Joe from having a meltdown.
The only meltdowns I see here are yours every time CA tries to do something new, Donald.
Okay, time for Attila.
I'm sorry, but apparently I can't play this game. According to CA, I need to wait until 2035 until a GPU good enough to run it comes along.
Very funny, Donald. Anyway, Attila is like an improved version of Rome 2 with more of a challenge to boot.
If by challenge you mean constant annoyances to the player.
Oh, boo fucking who. The goal of Attila was to make the player feel like they were barely surviving in a harsh time period. So yeah, I'd expect annoyances to be part of the equation.
The realistic kind of annoyances I could forgive. But there's some shit in there that just feels artificial, like random buildings like libraries costing food or causing squalor. How the fuck does that work?
I agree, the building's bonuses and malices didn't always make sense. But at least they forced you to plan your cities more carefully compared to Rome 2.
Again, it all felt just artificial. I don't mind them trying to make a harder game after the snooze fest that was Rome 2, but I wish they'd done it in a way that doesn't suck ass.
And I wish you'd shut the fuck up.
Okay, this is getting heated. If Rome 2 is C tier and we can agree Attila is somewhat of an improvement, what do you think of B tier?
Too low, but fine.
Too high, but whatever.
And now Warhammer 1.
Are you kidding me? Are we going to rate all of them individually? Do you want this call to last until Sleepy Joe dies of exhaustion?
Can't believe I'm saying this, but I agree with Donald for once. May as well just rate all of them at the same time at the end.
All right. Thrones of Britannia then.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize we were also ranking the mobile games.
Oh, come on, you nostalgic fat fuck. It's not that bad.
Boring battles, boring campaign, boring game.
Boring battles? Thrones of Britannia had the best sieges in the series.
That's true, actually.
All right. I'll concede that the siege battles are pretty good, but the rest of the game sure as fuck is not. Unless you're a fan of the time period, this one definitely belongs in the trash.
That's way too harsh, way too harsh. But it's also not my favorite, so I'm not going to waste too much energy defending it. I feel I'm going to need it for later.
Yes, save the little energy you still have, Joe.
So what are we saying, C tier, D tier?
Try F tier.
If Rome 2 is C tier, I think it's only fair Thrones should be D tier.
That's good enough for me. Now let's talk about Three Kingdoms.
Yeah, let's talk about selling out to the Chinese market. I don't want an American company doing that on my watch.
CA is Canadian, you dumb fuck.
I'd say that's pretty unfair. I mean, China is a pretty big part of world history. I think it's perfectly fine to depict it in a video game without being accused of selling out. I didn't hear anyone saying CA was selling out to the Japanese market when they made Shogun.
No, that one was for the weed market.
I can't take this guy anymore. I think me and Barack should just finish this tier list alone while your sorry ass whines in a corner playing 20-year-old games and pretending they're good.
That's the thing with good games, Joe. You don't have to pretend. I don't expect you to get it given the kind of games you like.
Guys, let's focus on the matter at hand, please. In my opinion, 3K isn't the absolute best Total War game out there, but it's definitely a good one.
It's definitely good, and in fact, it's more than that. They took note of the mistakes they made in their earlier games and perfected their 2010s formula. This game is like what Rome 2 should have been on release.
Oh, so Rome 2 shouldn't have featured naval combat then?
Who the hell unironically cares about naval combat when the conflict takes place inland? You're just being a contrarian for the sake of being a contrarian. Shocker.
Wrong, and just like Shogun 2, Three Kingdoms only has one culture. Again, that's just boring.
That's just plain wrong. Even if we disregard the Furious Wilds DLC, the base game contains distinct factions such as the Yellow Turbans and Bandits.
Oh yeah, thanks for mentioning DLC. Remember how everyone was hyped because the campaign map contained Vietnam and Korea and both were hinted at eventually becoming DLC, only for CA to randomly drop the game after their garbage expansion packs nobody asked for failed to sell?
I agree, that was pretty shameful.
That's true. Doesn't take away from the main game, however.
And what is it with CA's obsession for broken single-entity units these days? Maybe in Warhammer I can forgive a one-man stack, but in an historical setting?
That's only in romance mode. Just turn on records mode and stop bitching already.
I just wish that after years of fantasy shit, they'd make a pure historical title, that's all.
And by historical, you mean ninja Romans and time-traveling Egyptians like in your esteemed Rome one.
Let's wrap this up. I'd say this is an A tier.
You're out of your goddamn mind. Ain't no way this is an A-tier game with the way CA fucked it over.
Fine, we'll drop it to B tier due to the fact it got abandoned way too soon. Everybody happy?
No.
No.
Too bad. Next we have Troy.
Awful battle physics. Truly awful. Just sad.
For once, I don't entirely disagree with this fat fuck. I thought their idea of introducing armor types was great, but it sorely lacked execution. And the physics are just not that great. Let's be real.
The trade system was quite good, though.
I'll agree with that. Too bad it got tied to such an awful game. And let's not forget the joke that we're truth behind the myth units.
Maybe the concept was a bit ridiculous, but at least they brought variety to the battles.
Fine, whatever. What do you say we put this next to Thrones and move on?
Are you kidding me? Troy is at least one tier above Thrones. Sure, the battles are not the best, but the campaign mechanics are quite fun and diverse.
Ain't no way in hell Troy's on the same level as Rome 2. Even I don't disrespect Rome 2 that much.
It's a saga game, you dumbass. It's meant to be smaller in scope. It's fine for it to be on the same tier as Rome 2.
Yeah, a smaller game with a $50 price tag? What a joke.
I have to say I agree that this shouldn't be on the same tier as Rome 2. I'd say we put it in C and up Rome 2 to B tier.
Can we move on already? No human being was meant to put so much thought into fucking Troy of all games.
Okay, now let's talk about the Warhammer trilogy.
Wide as an ocean, deep as a puddle.
Now you're just being ridiculous, even more so than before, if you can believe that. Warhammer is a masterpiece, and you know it.
It's a very ambitious series, I won't deny that. Doesn't change the fact that it has design issues and that it lacks execution in some areas. There are bugs in the current game that are almost 7 years old.
I'll admit that the series has bugs so persistent they're basically features at this point. But that doesn't take away from how great the game is in general. Name one strategy game with even half as many unit models and animation as the Warhammer trilogy.
Yeah, you know what? I'd sure as hell hope the game is beefy after paying for it 3 times. Yes.
Is your old ass forgetting shit already? You don't have to pay for it 3 times anymore. With IE having been made accessible to everyone, you can literally just pay for what you want as long as you own the 3rd game.
That's an improvement. Kind of sad they had to give IE to everyone just because they are incapable of creating fun campaigns for their standalone games, though. Realms of Chaos was an exercise in human patience. In fact, so was Vortex to a lesser extent.
Can you stop bitching about the standalone campaign long enough to recognize that the combined map is absolutely insane already?
Fine, the combined map is ambitious, the unit models are great and highly varied, but the combat and campaign mechanics are lacking.
Maybe the overall campaign mechanics aren't the deepest, but I think the race and faction-specific mechanics more than make up for that.
Yeah, too bad over half of them are complete ass.
I'd say the same for combat mechanics. Yes, maybe the base physics aren't the best, and cavalry doesn't feel as impactful as it did in the older games. But there are so many schools of magic, unit types, and abilities that all is forgiven in my book.
100% agreed. Barack, put this shit in S tier before our dear Donald finds even more reasons to moan about it.
Oh, is it bedtime already, Joe? Can't handle the discussion going on any longer?
I'm barely older than you dumb fuck. There's just no point talking to someone with nostalgia goggles glued to their eyes like you.
You know what? I agree. I've had enough of you for the day. Let's put Warhammer in Tier A and leave it at that.
Are you out of your goddamn mind? If Warhammer isn't S tier, then none of these games are.
Yes, they can be. Warhammer isn't the best Total War game. It's as simple as that.
I let your nostalgic ass put Medieval 2 in S tier, so take the fucking L for once and accept that that's also where Warhammer belongs.
Okay, fine, as long as it gets me out of this boring fucking call.
We have another S tier then.
All right, hope you're happy with your shitty tier list. See you, you fucking losers.
Why do we even hang out with this guy?